little gathering. So thank you for joining me. I encourage you to put your pronouns where your name is, like I have. So if you hover over your image, there should be 3 dots there, and you click rename and then you put your pronouns in. But besides that, if like Dan, you'd like to introduce yourself with your name, your pronouns, and something you are really loving about yourself today, that would be really, really great before we get into it.
Hi, I'm Dan. I use he, him pronouns. Sorry, I don't know if I'm coming through clearly. Just a mic check. And something I am loving about myself today is I am thinking about my students and how I should teach them the best I can. And that makes me feel good and have a sense of purpose. Is it? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Alex, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hello, I'm Alex. I use they, them pronouns. Something I'm loving about myself, first of all, I love this check-in question. It's fantastic. Someone called me handsome last night, and I was like, oh, I felt that right in my gender. Let's go. So I'm still riding that high today.
Yay, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you could be affirmed in that way. Cool. So let's get into it. My intentions for the space is that it's just like chill. It's not necessarily supposed to feel like work. So just like stay aware of your boundaries and participate when you can or when you feel like it. But if you're like not feeling it today, like there's no pressure. I could talk for forever about these poems. And that's what I was intending to do anyway. So a bit of background about how this workshop came about. Because I've like picked up writing again, I've been really tapping into the erotic in my relationships and in my poetry. And I use erotic in the sense that is like based off of Audre Lorde's writings about eroticism. So the erotic as like a sensual source of power that we've been taught to suspect and vilify and abuse and devalue. The erotic can be about sharing deeply with another person. It's in the sharing of joy, whether that's physical, emotional, intellectual, or sexual, in order to get comfortable with our differences. So to me, channeling the erotic and also reproductive justice overlap in that they both involve deeply connecting with and sharing our testimonies and also sharing our art with one another. So, excuse me. So while I was thinking about the erotic and what it means to write from that space, I was exploring the visual art and poetry of Black Brazilian women and figuring out how their art inspires understandings of their bodies as belonging to a community and also to a spiritual world. So in my work, I found and also wanted to share this like very gay poem written by Miriam Alves under her lesbian pseudonym Zula Gibi. Not only because she's brilliant and writes in a very direct way that has inspired my poetry, but also because I think she has a lot to say about the nature of eroticism in her publishing. So I'm going to drop that in the chat. And hopefully it'll let me copy and paste it. Called Hidden in the Night. And I can read it. It says, I like to rock you in your desires, to peer through the cracks in ecstasy, to slurp gently, patiently the red chalice, dripping and permanent, feeling instinct slide on the raw drool of desire, to wander through the half-open spaces offered on fingertips, binding secrets with sweet gestures through the intimate fiber of time. Rest your head, disciple, on the lines of river, sea, and sky, in the no limit of your body and my body. And I guess some questions to hold when thinking about that poem are, what do you feel when you hear or read it? What are you noticing? What words stick out to you? What ideas does the poem raise that you're interested in exploring more? And I really love this poem because it makes what's supposed to be impossible very possible, which has implications for our organizing. Like the encounter between her and her lover is something that's hidden, according to the title, probably for safety reasons, because we know it's not really safe to be queer in the wider heterosexual world, but it's still happening, you know? And I guess that's what I mean by making the impossible possible. Like she and her lover are still meeting up, and she's still sharing the event with us to experience, which I think also speaks to the power of poetry to realize what has been labeled as perverse or too extra, are wanting a freer and more loving world with the people we care about. And poetry can be a really freeing medium to help us find what we long for, and also for the purposes of just dreaming. And I also am noticing these contrasts she's making between hidden half open spaces and no limit bodies, and between impermanence, so things that can't really last that long, and binding secrets through time, so preserving them. That feels like it's really about finding the possibilities in confinement. Like we may always be subject to bullshit social constraints that make it hard for us to express ourselves and our love publicly and openly, but as trans and queer people, we can still meet some kind of liberating desire, you know, like we still have access to and can channel that love, even if others don't think we can or should. And I think that's what the poem is really getting at. So my larger question is like, how do we imagine a world where we get to keep our desire and keep our erotic power despite all the bullshit? How do we sit with it and write it with poetic care? Reproductive justice teaches us, importantly, that exercising our capacity to dream is how other worlds and liberation paths come into view. And it also teaches us that we should center our expressions of desire in our imagining and make room in our lives for self-sustaining pleasure, which is why I love it so much, and why I am interning at Spark RJ. So I want to take like 15 minutes to just like write the first prompt, and I'm going to post it in the chat. It is write a poem, letter, or prose piece about love in captivity, love that may be limited, trapped, or confined. Consider things about ourselves or larger social issues that make it hard for us to express and receive the love we deserve, but how we do and find it anyway. So that is the first prompt. And I will put some slow jams on to mark the time. So that was about 15 minutes. Let me turn off my alarm before it just like completely goes off in everyone's ears. Okay, great. Feel free to share what you wrote. Feel free not to share what you wrote. I can definitely share what I wrote though. I wrote about being sick in bed. Shout out to disabled people. Stuck in bed and stuck indoors, and also in America, because my family is originally from Jamaica, and a lot of the poetry I write, I think, tries to conjure up my memories from the time that I've spent in Jamaica, and also dreaming about my partner. So yeah, it's important when I'm depressed to do that conjuring work of imagining other worlds I can escape to or work towards. That's one way that I find my love is constrained just through illness and contained, and also how it manifests regardless. So the poem that I wrote was, "My bed holds me here, grounds me where all else fails. I muster a shift in the darkness and say your name is prayer. An incantation, I find you crouched in the blues and greens of the riverbank, the flame of crimson clover sweeping your thighs. Watch you sink into the fruit of the ackee, which poisons those who cannot prepare it. And imagine what it would be like to drink from your cup, to hold you on my tongue like guinnep, soursop, the sensation of sitting on the veranda, swirling red stripe around in the mouth, expelled by the pressing of chests together in ecstatic embrace." So yeah, that was my poem. Don't know if anyone else wants to share, but if not, I can step into the next poem from Miriam Alves that I wanted to just bring to light. Also, most of her poems are like on her Facebook page, private Facebook page. So that's where I've like managed to like pull all of these from. She isn't really like super well known outside of Brazil. But the next poem I want to look at is Revolt of Desires. And I was watching an interview of hers before this workshop actually, and she gave us this really like juicy quotation that I just want to read before we step into the poem. She said she wants to build, with her poetry, she wants to build an imagery of combat, of possibility, of happiness, of achievement, of touching Black skin because she likes it, because literature is delicious. And I find that just absolutely delightful. And I think she does it so successfully. The second poem is Revolt of Desires, and I will also place it in the chat for folks to read.
Could you also put her name in the chat just so we have it?
Oh
Like,
yeah, of course. Alves.
awesome, thank you.
And the poem goes, "Our desires suffocate the arms that contain us in the conventional heat called love. Our desires rise in protest, open their legs, shut ancient trenches, provoking new steps in the rhythm of the unknown. Our desires go hand in hand, connect our navels in a new dance, snapping old fears. They lash us as we cry out for freedom, purging the great hands that want to tame us." So again, just gonna give everyone a moment to just like look over the poem again. And also some questions just to repeat, to hold when thinking about it. You know, what do you feel when you hear or read the poem? What are you noticing? What words stick out to you? What ideas is the poem raise you're interested in exploring? And also, how does it overlap and contrast with the first poem and prompt? For me, like compared to Hidden in the Night, it's definitely more of a forceful poem, even in form. Like these frequent line breaks that she's doing drive you through the poem, which also points to the immediacy and urgency and excitement of the moment that she's writing about, which I think is a really good aesthetic choice. She really does move you at a poetic pace that feels like pressured, but I'm thinking it's in order to convey that the work of expressing our desires is like just as pressing and important and something that like cannot wait. And in my opinion, there's something really liberating and kind of scary just to me, about thinking about our desires, not as something that we let sit in a corner until we're ready for it, which capitalism often demands, but something that we can mobilize to destroy the capitalist, racist, and transphobic system that we're living in. It's something that we need now. And I think Alves is making clear that though we may not be able to interact with our desires in familiar ways or even move in the same ways that we are now once our chains are broken, she says, we learn new steps in the rhythm of the unknown, that there are and will always be new dances and ways of relating to each other that are based on touch, closeness, and collectivity. So maybe there's nothing really in there to fear. So yeah, I'm just gonna drink some water quickly.
That's resonating with me so hard. Like this poem is beautiful, wonderful. Yeah, I just like the explicit tying of like politics to desire, because like for queer people, like that's it. Like that's
Yeah,
what you're doing. But yeah, this is I love it.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad that it resonates. I also really love it. I feel like she manages to say exactly what my inner world is trying to like convey in just like the shortest like lines possible. And that's like just a skill that I really aspire to. So yeah, like zooming out from the first prompt, like we've written about how our love can be constrained. So now we're going to write about how our love revolts, because I really vibe with the claim that our desires have the power to like kill off what threatens to kill us, and also that our desires find expression within the love that we carry. So the prompt is, and I will also post it in the chat, is how does your love revolt? How does it resist the confines of it's subjected to? What does it talk back to? What does it destroy or birth? And what do the feelings of rebellion and also perhaps fear and trust evoke in your spirit or imagination? So a few questions to think about, and I will give it, how much time do we have left? Oh, we're making good time. So I will give it like 10 to 15 more minutes for us to like write about this. And then we'll come back and maybe share what we wrote, but then we can just wrap up. So we're about at time. Yeah, I'm just going to share what I wrote and feel free to share what you wrote. But if not, then we can wrap up. No title to this poem, just getting things off my chest. It goes, our love lays hands on those who need it, cautious with open hearts. It stays up late at the kitchen table, convincing us we deserve better. It doesn't put us up in a rundown state shelter until we're back on our feet. It breaks back into our house and tells the landlord he'll have to deal with a mob of angry crip queers if he attempts eviction again. And when we're assaulted or murdered, our love is a bashing back, an expression of rage that makes it clear we are finished with these routines of violence, of quietly shaking heads at tragedy, of asking for change. Our love is not afraid to try new things. It's dynamic enough to know that at times healing comes in the form of vengeance, and change comes in the form of destroying what destroys us. And that was very much based off of Alves's poem about snapping fears and purging the great hands that want to tame us. I find a lot of like emotional solace and like comfort in the knowledge that another like Black queer person is out there like writing about like just being uncontainable and undisciplined and just like dancing and loving and being in community. And that's like what drives me and drives my poetry. So if no one else wants to share, I am happy to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming and for listening. Wait, Dan, do you want to share something?
Oh no, I just wanted to say thank you. I just wanted to jump in and say thank you whenever you finished up.
All right, thank you so much, y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is really wonderful.
That was beautiful and restorative.
Yay, I'm so glad. Thank you. See you soon.
See y'all.